until unless we are not doing anything on the internet, so we are not computing anything. So this is a fundamental element of the computing system. These micro instances are very low cost instance type designed for lower throughput applications and web services, where we can use a CPU to the maximum extent, that is called as high CPU extent. To run any particular application, what all the environment is required, that is called as EC2 environment. Hello everyone, welcome to one more session on cloud computing. Myself Indu J, Faculty of Computer Science Department, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. Today in this session, we are going to discuss about some cloud platforms which is available in industry, that is included in your syllabus as a module 4, that is cloud platform in industries. So let's see the content what we have in this particular unit. We are going to discuss Amazon Web Services, Google App Engine. In Amazon Web Services, we are going to discuss 4 different types of services that is provided by the Amazon Web Services. One is compute service, then storage service, communication service, and additional service. Additional service is that apart from compute, storage and communication, we can do, or Amazon service can provide more services apart from these basic services. That is what about additional services. Google App Engine is one more application platform or one more cloud platform which is running in today's industry. That is, we are going to discuss here the architecture and the core component of the Google App Engine, then application life cycle of Google App Engine, how the Google App Engine process the application, how it will be used. This Amazon will provide as solution, this Google will provide PaaS services. Okay, then cost module and observation made depend on the services provided by the Google App Engine. Next, what we have is Microsoft Azure. In that, we are going to discuss about Azure core concept, on what concepts the Azure has been developed, and SQL Azure, Windows Azure platform applications and observations. Next, let us have the discussion on Amazon Web Services. So Amazon Web Services is a development of flexible application by providing a solution for elastic infrastructure, scalability and messaging and also data storage. Why we are using Amazon Web Server? For all this purpose. It provides what? Elastic infrastructure. Elastic infrastructure means we can add up the resources or we can delete the resources. Scalability, it also provides the messaging or communication between each applications and then used for data storage. Accessible through the SOAP. What do you mean by SOAP? Simple Object Access Protocol. It is how we are accessing the services in Amazon Web Server by using Simple Object Accessing Protocol, one type of protocol, or RESTful we can say. The full form of RESTful is Representation State Transfer. That is how we are providing the communication. Web Service Interface expands your compute on pay-as-you basis. Obviously, all cloud computing platform works on pay-as-you go, that basis. In Amazon Web Services ecosystem, we are going to discuss. Just now what we have discussed, what all the service provided by the Amazon Web Servers: compute service, storage service, communication service and additional service. In compute service, what all we are going to discuss? Amazon Elastic Cloud Computing, that is EC2. What is E stand for? E stand for elasticity, one C stand for compute and another C stand for cloud. It can be called as Amazon Cloud Compute also. Okay, EC2. In that again we are going to discuss Amazon Elastic MapReduce. MapReduce is the application software used to process the large amount of data sets. Okay, then Elastic Beanstalk. Then AWS Cloud Formation, how the cloud formation of AWS will be done, and auto scaling. Then in the storage services, what all the services we are providing? Amazon is providing Amazon Simple Storage Services, that is S3. Amazon Simple Storage Services, Amazon Basic Block Storage, basic block storage it is going to provide. It is called elastic storage services. Amazon elastic cache, that is elastic cache memory. We are providing the elasticity to the cache memory, simple database and then the relational database. These are all we are going to discuss in the storage services. Communication services, Amazon simple queues, SQLs what we are using, that is using the SQL servers, you are using the SQS simple queue, how we are communicating, that is using the message passing. EBS, Amazon simple notification services, Amazon simple email services. These are all the different type of communication services provided by the Amazon web servers or services. Apart from these, we have additional services, that is Amazon Government Cloud, Amazon CloudWatch, flexible payment services, Amazon delivery payments, like this all different additional services also provided in the framework or in the ecosystem of Amazon Web Services. Next, Amazon Web Services, compute services, storage services, communication and additional services. What is communication service? Communication service is a fundamental element of cloud computing. As we are communicating over the internet, obviously communication, compute we need. What is computing? Computing is nothing but doing something. Until unless we are not doing anything on the internet, so we are not computing anything. So this is a fundamental element of the computing system. Amazon EC2, which is delivered as SaaS solution, that is infrastructure as a solution. Amazon EC2 allow deploying services in the form of virtual machine images. How it is providing? In the form of virtual machine images. These images comes with the pre-installed operating systems and software stack. Okay, how images is given? Images is given by giving pre-installed operating system and a software stack. In compute services, we are going to discuss Amazon machine images, EC2 instance, EC2 environment and advanced computing services. Let's see what is machine images. AMIs, we call it as Amazon machine images, are a template for which it is possible to create the virtual machine. So far we have discussed in the previous sessions what is the main purpose here, to create the virtual machine. How to create the virtual machine is given by Amazon machine images. It helps in creating the virtual machine. They are stored in Amazon S3. This is one of the storage services where these images will be stored. These images will be stored where? In Amazon S3. Next, in a EC2, Elastic Cloud Compute Instant. Instance means at that particular time what is going on exactly. When you run the virtual machine in the cloud environment, they are known as instant, right? Running or executing at that particular time is called as instance. There are 6 major categories in EC2 instance. First one is standard instance. What do you mean by standard instance? Each instance type includes varying combination of resources. Varying combination of resources. That is what we call it as heterogeneity. Okay, and one or more instance size. It can combine with more instance size. For example, if one program is executing for 30 seconds and another instance is executing for 50 seconds, you can combine together and form one new instance, allowing you to scale your resources and equipments as a target workload. What it does? To scale your resources, increase or decrease your resources according to your workload. The second type of instance what we have is micro instance. These micro instances are very low cost instance type designed for lower throughput applications and web services where we don't need much of the resources and it will be used for only small time. That time we can go for micro instance. As name itself indicates, it's a very small instance, hence it is very small, it is very cost effective. Then high memory instance. What do you mean by high memory instance? It offers from 3 terabyte to 24 terabyte of memory in one instance. That is called as, we are using highest memory to execute one particular instance. So it is called as high memory instance. These instances are purpose built to run the large databases. Why we are using this? To run the large databases. Apart from that, we have high CPU instance, where we can use a CPU to the maximum extent. That is called as high CPU extent. The processing capability of the system is very large, but we don't use that much processing. So when we use a large processing capabilities, that is called as the instant, those are used for the purpose to build a maximum CPU utilization. That is called as high CPU instance. The cluster computing instance. All of you know what is clusters. We are making a group of some systems and naming those group as a cluster. Within the network, you can create one or more placement groups of the type cluster and then launch cluster compute instance within each group. Within one group, you can launch one instance. That is called as cluster computing instance. Cluster GPU instance. GPU stands for graphical processing unit. You can either use for computing or you can use this cluster for graphical usage. New instance type designed to deliver the power of GPU processing in the cloud. Next, what we have is EC2 instance. What is EC2 environment? So far we have discussed about EC2 instance. There are different types of instance. We have done with that. Next we have EC2 environment. What is environment? Environment created to run that particular instance is called as environment. The virtual environment which provides them the service they required to host the application. To run any particular application, what all the environment is required, that is called as EC2 environment. In charge of allocating the address, attaching the storage volume and configuring the security in terms of access control and the network connectivity. What this environment will be having? It will be having address attaching, where the application has to run, where application has to be stored, how the application should be provided with the security and access control and network connectivity, whether this application is connected to the other applications, like that connectivity network. This all will be provided by the EC2 environment. Instances are created within the internal IP addresses, which marks them as a capable of communication within the easy to network and access to internet by client. Next we have additional services. Additional computing services, Advanced Computing Services, AWS Cloud Formation Model that characterize easy to instance. Template provides a simple and declarative way to build the complex system. Using this template, we can build a complex problem in the simple way. AWS Elastic Beanstalk constitute a simple and easy way to package application and deploy them on AWS cloud. Beanstalk is used for what? Package applications. Services is available for web application developed within the Java technology or Java stack. Amazon Elastic MapReduce. Here some of the example they have given. MapReduce provides for cloud computing platform for MapReduce application for processing the large number of data. It utilizes a Hadoop as a MapReduce engine. We move on to the storage services. What we have in the storage services? The storage, you need faster access. Wherever we store, we need to have faster access. We need to fetch the data in fraction of seconds. Makes a resource available in the minutes, not in the weeks. In a fraction of second, it should be available for the user. Speed time to market, avoid the complex capacity planning and reduce the over provisioning with just in few clicks. These are all the features provided by the storage services. In storage services, we are dealing with the simple storage services called as S3. What is simple storage services? The key concept of simple storage services: Amazon Elastic Block Stores, Amazon Elastic Cache and a structured storage solution, and Amazon CloudFront. These are all we are going to discuss in the storage services. Next, look into the storage services. In the storage services, we are going to discuss about the S3 key concept. What is S3? Simple storage solutions. Okay, S3 is built to store and retrieve any amount of the data from anywhere. You can retrieve any amount of the data, any large amount or small amount of the data from anywhere you are there. Data is stored as object within the resource called as buckets. How data is stored in S3? In the form of objects, which is called as bucket. With the cost-effective storage classes and easy to use management features, you can optimize the cost organization data and configuring the fine-tune access control to meet the specific business. For particular business or particular aspects, while you are fetching the data, you can fine-tune the data. You might have heard about digital marketing, and using digital marketing, what happens, you are searching something on some keywords basis, like that it will provide some keen access which is you are searching particularly for. Next, what we have is Amazon Elastic Block Store, that is called as EBS, provides EC2 instance with the persistent storage in the form of volume that can be mounted into that instance startup. It will give the amount of storage only for particular instance. EBS volumes normally reside within the same availability zone. If you are using EBS, then it should be EBS instant only, that is Amazon Elastic Cloud Instant only, that will be used on them, maximize the input operation. Since we are using in the same environment, we can maximize the input output performance. Next, what we have is Amazon Elastic Cache. All of you heard about cache memory. Cache memory is a virtual memory, it does not exist physically. Here also it is a virtual memory. Implementation of elasticity in the memory cache based on the cluster of EC2 instance. It is based on the cluster of EC2 instance running cache software which is made available through the web services. Elastic class cluster can be dynamically resized according to the demand of the client application. It can be dynamically resized according to the client application. And then fourth point here is in the storage services is Amazon structured storage solution. Amazon provides application with the structured storage services. There are three type of application: pre-configured, Amazon relational database, and Amazon simple database. Pre-configured EC2 AMIs, that is Amazon machine images, means what? Are predefined template featuring and installation of given database management system in EC2 instance created from the AMIs can be completed within the EBS volume. It is predefined, already is defined by the machine images, and that has to be used as a database in the EC2 instances. That is predefined or pre-configured EC2 AIMs. Then Amazon Relational Database, RDS. It is a relational database services that relies on EC2 infrastructure and is managed by Amazon. Okay, here pre-configured is based on instance, it is based on infrastructure. Developer do not have to worry about configuration, storage for availability, designing failover strategies, or keeping the service up to date. Here everything is taken care by whom? Taken care by Amazon. What all? Everything means configuration, storage, design, failure, and keeping the server updates, everything is taken care by Amazon itself. Amazon Simple GB, one more type of storage. It is lightweight, highly scalable and flexible data storage solution for the application. Comparing to RDS, it is very lightweight and highly scalable and flexible. And it's not required to fully relational data model. Because why it is light? Because it is not fully relational model. We are not providing relation of all the database together. Whichever required for that particular instance, that only will be providing. And this is all about storage services. Next type of services what we have is Amazon CloudFront. It is content delivery network. All of you know what is content delivery. You must know that is a booming thing. Collection of edge services strategy located across the globe to better serve request, static and streaming the web content. Web content can be distributed around the web. So what this cloud front will do, will put all together so that it made easy to access. The content that can be delivered through the cloud front is a static, though it is a dynamic content that will be fetched and put it somewhere in the cloud front, and from the cloud front whatever you have that will be displayed as a delivery, content delivery or streaming that can be streamed. Time messaging protocol will be used to stream or provide the communication for the cloud front end. Next, communication services. Next type of services what we have is communication services, facility to structure and facilitate the communication among the existing application. Why we are using communication service? To provide the communication between the existing application. We have two types of communication, virtual network communication and messaging. What we are doing in a virtual network communication, virtual network composed of collection of servers that allows the AWS user to control the connectivity through between computer and in the storage. Virtually we are creating one network to provide the communication between the computer and then the storage. That is called as virtual network. Messaging, communication using messaging. There are three different types of messaging. Amazon Simple Queue Services, SQS, that is stands for Simple Queue Services, and Amazon Simple Notification Services. Whenever we want to send some notification to the group of people, you cannot sit and type for each one. Just you are going to use this particular messaging services as notification services that will be sent to the group of people. Amazon Simple Email Services, this is used to have a one-to-one communication, very basic communication what we have for the nowadays. Next we will move on to the Google App Engine. First we have done with the AWS. The second platform what we are discussing is about Google App Engine. In Google App Engine, we are going to discuss about the architecture and the core concept, application lifecycle, cost model and observations. Let's see the architecture of the Google App Engine. What we'll be having? We'll be having sandbox runtime environment, web apps. Here we have a Google App Engine infrastructure. It will run on what? Runtime environment. Just above the runtime environment, we have a App Engine infrastructure. Using this App Engine infrastructure, they are going to create one runtime environment. We are going to develop some applications. So here we are going to discuss about architecture and the core concept. In architecture and core concept, we are going to discuss infrastructure, runtime environment, supported runtime, storage, application services and compute services. Architecture and the core concept, we are going to discuss all these factors. First one is infrastructure. Infrastructure means here basic infrastructure what we have to provide is server. Google App Engine used to take the advantage of multiple servers what we have. It combines the data of multiple servers to form one complete infrastructure. Then runtime environment. It creates a virtual runtime environment to host the applications using the sandbox technologies. Runtime environment provides a execution environment by isolating and scaling the resources. Then what we have is supported runtime. What all the application that supports the runtime, like Java SDK, Python SDK and Go. Go is one more new language used by the Google to build some application, that is supported runtime. Storage, as we have to have a storage for any of the data to be stored. We have two different types of storage. One is a static file storage and one more is data stores. In the storage we have two types. One is static file storage and second one is data store. In static file storage, everything is in the form of files. We are storing everything in the form of files. In the data stores, we are using it to store the semi-structured data. Semi-structured data will be stored in the data stores. Then application services. In application services, we'll be having access to data, running the applications, management of applications. These are all comes under application services. Next, in the compute services, user will take the feedback, how the computation has been done, and the feedback will be given instantly on that particular instance. So that all about the compute services. These are some of the core concepts that we have in the Google App Engine. That is infrastructure, runtime environment, supported runtime. In supported runtime, we have a different application that is supported for the runtime, like Java SDK that currently being used 6 and 7, and Python SDK 2.5.6 version will be using in the current scenario. Application life cycle. Next, what we have in the Google App Engine is application life cycle. This can be done in two ways, in the testing and development or monitoring and deployment. In application development and testing, what all the things we are using in the application development testing, that is we are using Java SDK to develop the application and test the application for the desired results, or we can use a Python SDK, because these are all the platform independent languages. It is easy to portable from one platform to the other platform. So apart from Java, we use Python, or we can use a web apps to develop the application and test the application. And the second point is we have applications development and management. One is what we are developing the application and we are testing the application in the life cycle, and the second is that we are developing and we are managing those applications. This can be done by App Engine with the sample clicks or command line tools, and we can use the App Engine plugin to manage the particular applications. Next, cost model. Set up a building cost and charges on the pay per use basis. As other platforms uses pay per use, the Google also, App Engine also uses pay per use. Developer to identify the appropriate daily budget. Here developer has to identify how much budget he need, how much resources he need, and appropriation is measured against the bill level quotes. It can be measured against, one is bill level quotes, or it can be fixed quotes, and it can be per minute quote. How a developer is going to give a daily budget? He can take the resources on per minute basis or fixed quote basis, or by billing per level. It's just like your mobile phone. Initially you have, when landlines, you talk for some minute, after that you are paying for someone, that is per minute quotes. And now we have a prepaid and postpaid, that is what bill level quotes. Prepaid, paid already this much, you are using only for that much. Postpaid or fixed, you are taking a monthly package, yearly package, like that. It is fixed for that duration, like that the billing will be done. Once an application reaches the quotes resources deprecated and will not be available to application until the quotes is reflushed. Means what? Once we have taken this particular quotes, out of these three, any one quotes, the resources which we want, that will be deprecated, that will be reserved for that person who has taken that quote. Okay, until unless available application quotes is reflushed. Till how long? Until unless he uses, until unless that period completes. So that will be taken. Once the resource is depleted, subsequent request for that particular resource will be generated an error. If other wants to take the same resources, so before this particular instant release the resources, then it will give you what? Error. Okay. Next, we'll move on to Microsoft Azure. One more cloud platform currently running in the industry, built on the top of Microsoft data centers infrastructure, where we are using it on the Microsoft data centers, and provides within the collection of services. It also provides different types of services. Services ranges from the compute, what all it provide: compute, storage, networking to application. From networking to application, all the services it will provide. Connectivity, address control, and the business intelligence to the application level, that is business intelligence. From the network level is connectivity. The figure provides the overview of services provided by the Azure. What all the services provided by the Azure? Compute services uses the Azure Compute. Storage services, Azure Storage and SQL Azures. Networking, Azure Connect. App Fabric integration, CDN, App Fabric caching. These are all the services provided by the networking services. Identity and the marketplace. These are all the application services provided by the Microsoft Azure. Next, we'll see Azure Core Concept, SQL Azure and Windows Azure Platform Applications. These are all we are going to discuss in Microsoft Azure. Let's have compute services. What is compute services? Compute services, in compute services we are going to discuss about three roles, that is web role, worker role and virtual machine role. Web role is designed to implement the scalable web application. Why we are using this web role? To implement the scalable web application. Then worker role is used to provide the general computing services. Then virtual machine role. This virtual machine role allows the full control of both web role and then the worker role, creating the new virtual machine to provide the compute services. This is about the compute services. Then we move on to the storage services. What exactly the storage services will be provided? Blobs. Storage provided using the blobs. What is blob? Blob is large amount of the data stored in the binary format, that is called as blob. What is blob? In binary large object, it is called as blobs. Binary large objects. There are two types in blobs. One is block blobs and one is page blobs. Okay, what is blob? The data will be stored in the form of blobs. Blobs is nothing but binary large object. In the form of object they are storing. So in the blobs we have two category, block blobs and the page blobs. Here the storage will be divided in the form of blocks. Whenever we need, we can fetch it as a form of blocks, and in the page blobs, whenever we want to fetch the data, we are searching in the page. Depending on the index, we are going to fetch the data. That is all about blobs. Azure Drive, you can store the data in its own drive, that is called as Microsoft Azure Drive, or in the form of table. You can store the data in the formats as we are doing in the database. You can store in the form of tables or you can store in the form of queues. Queues means whenever we want to communicate or exchange the data in the form of messaging. In the form of messaging, we are communicating or exchanging the data, that is called as in the queue form. Next what we have is core infrastructure. In that core infrastructure, access control, service bus and Azure cache we are going to discuss. Apart from that, other services what we have is Azure virtual machine and content delivery network. What is core infrastructure? Core infrastructure. What is core infrastructure? Core infrastructure is used to develop, deploy and manage. We are using this core infrastructure for development, deployment and management. How all these things be done? By using the access control or by providing the communication. How we are providing the communication for managing? Using the service buses and Azure cache. Cache is a virtual memory which will hold the temporary data that is needed for the execution. This is about the core infrastructure and other services. Amazon virtual machine and content delivery network, what we have is other type of services provided by the Amazon. Next we move on to the SQL Azure architecture. SQL layered architecture. Here what we have: infrastructure layer, service layer and then the client layer, platform layer. Infrastructure layer, what we have, obviously we know that is a physical part of a thing. In the platform layer, the services provided by the SQL is SQL Server, Azure Fabric and management services. It will provide the management services that communicate between each other to have a proper SQL stands for what? Sequential querying language. Whenever we are querying something to fetch the data, that is for SQL Azure. In the service layer, provisioning, billing, metering and connection routing. In a service layer, what it will do? It will provide the resources, it will bill according to the provided resources and connect routing. It will provide the network connectivity. And in the client layer, it will be used. How it will be used? By using ODBC. ODBC is one of the applications that uses the SQL servers for querying the applications, using the data, querying the data using applications. Next, SQL Azure. SQL Azure is a relational database services hosted on the Windows and built on the SQL Server technology. What is SQL Server? It is a database technology. Why are SQL servers provides the developer with the scalable, highly available and fault tolerant relational data? Why we are using the SQL Server? Because SQL Server is already been tested. It been provided with the scalable, high availability and fault tolerant relational database. The service manageable using the REST APIs, allowing the developer to control the data. Who is going to control the data in the SQL? Who is going to develop the application will control. Developer have to sign up for Windows Azure account in the order to use a SQL Azure. Developer has to be in a part of this. Then only he can use a SQL Azure. Closely resemble the physical SQL server. This SQL Azure server is also closely resembled with the physical which is present that servers and name under the database Windows that uses the .NET technology. This simplifies the management task and interaction with the SQL Azure from the client application. Using this SQL Azure, it simplifies the interconnection and communication between the client applications. Then Windows Azure Platform appliances. What all the appliances of this Windows Azure? Includes the Windows Azure. It includes Windows Azure, SQL and Microsoft specified configuration of networks, and appliances targets the government and the service provider who wants to have their own cloud computing infrastructure. Who wants to develop their own cloud computing infrastructure, they can use this Windows Azure. Fully feature implemented. It is complete. All the features are implemented in the Windows Azure. Goal is to replicate the Azure on the third-party infrastructure and make available its services beyond the boundaries of Microsoft Cloud. Behind, you should add, you should delete, whatever you want you can do. It has to be beyond the boundaries to create the Windows Azure applications. Then the appliances addresses two major scenarios where we can use this Windows Azure appliances. In two major scenarios we can use. Institutes that have very large computing needs such as a government agencies. Institute which has very large computing needs. Large data has to be transferred or large data has to be managed. That time they are using. Or one more scenario where we can use this is institute that cannot afford the transfer of data outside their premises. We cannot transfer the data out of our premises. We want in-house, everything in-house. Those can opt. Where we have a large amount of the data, though institutes can be opted by the appliances, or they don't want to distribute their data, those institutions can also be opting this Windows Azure appliances. Thank you.